can all switch on cameras now so that we'll start in a minute so that we're all ready. Saurav, are we live?
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I think we should start now.
Yes, Kritik.
Saurav, okay. Good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Lieutenant General BS Nagal, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Lieutenant Colonel Sg Thotty, Colonel P. Vijay Reddy, Shri Singh Boparai, Kirti Chakra, a retired officer of the Indian Administrative Service, their families, Professor Dr. Bimal N. Patel, Vice Chancellor, Rashtriya Raksha University, serving and retired members of the armed forces, guests from Bangladesh, NCC cadets, students from various schools, colleges, and universities, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for Rashtriya Raksha University to have this month's webinar telecasted on the Gallantry Awards portal. This was made possible by Colonel Nitish Bhatnagar, Director of School of IT, AI, and Cybersecurity. I, Kritika Patil, on behalf of School of Internal Security, Defense and Strategic Studies, and our Director, Colonel Deepak Joshi, welcome you all to the monthly webinar on the 1971 war to mark its 50th year. Every month, we bring out new aspects of the 1971 war. In the month of December last year, we started with the overview of the war on the Vijay Diwas, that was 16th December. Following that, we had a discussion on Battle of Hilli in the month of January. Then in the month of February, we had detailed discussion on the Battle of Naya Chor. We discussed about the war against Pakistan's genocide in the month of March. Thereafter, we talked about the Battle of Basantar in detail in the month of April. In the month of May, we talked and discussed about the naval operations of the 1971 war, followed by the famous Battle of Longewal in the month of June. In the month of July, we talked about the air operations of the 1971 war. And last month, we discussed in detail about the Battle of Cham. Today's webinar is the 10th in the series and is based on Battle of Fazilka Amidst danger they persevered. This webinar has been possible due to the guidance and foresight of a former director, Lieutenant General Dr. Subrata Saha. We thank him for his commitment to the school and university. Our current director, Colonel Deepak Joshi, will give the opening address, but before that, a brief about him. Colonel Deepak Joshi is currently the director in charge in the School of Internal Security, Defense, and Strategic Studies at Raksha University. The colonel has served the Indian Army for 32 years when he superannuated in October 2019. The professor has a unique distinction of being alumni of Kumon University, Nainital, Madras University, Chennai, Devi Ahilyabai University, Indore, Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, Defence Services Staff College, Wellington, and Indian Institute of Management, Indore. Having served as instructor in 5 Army Academic Institute in his tenure in the Army, the professor was resource person for research and publication in Defence Service Staff College, Wellington. He has rich experience of insurgency and counterinsurgency, having served in Sri Lanka, Jammu and Kashmir, and northeastern states of India. Before I hand over to the director, a couple of housekeeping points. Keep yourself muted. The Q&A session will begin after the 4 speakers have spoken. And what we can do is all of them who want to ask questions need to address whom the question is addressed to, and they can message to SISDSS. If you see, there's a SISDSS who's our host. They can message to SISDSS that they want to ask a question. When we have the question answer round, we can make them panelists and they can ask the question directly. If you don't want to do that, you can also message the question in the chat box. Now, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Kritika. That was indeed a very heartening kind of opening remarks which you gave, and of course the small introduction which you gave about me. Thank you for that. But this is in front of my former bosses over here who have been my guiding light in life. So that was quite a, telling them something about me was quite event which I would not prefer. But anyway, Lieutenant General BS Nagal, Param Vishish Seva Medal, Param Vishish Ati Vishish Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Lieutenant Colonel SG Thatte, Colonel P. Vijay Reddy, Shri Singh Boparai, Kirti Chakra, the attendees of this webinar, dear students and faculty and people from outside. This battle of Fazilka has been very close to my heart, and ever since I joined, I wanted this to be presented as soon as possible, but it could not be made possible because we were trying to follow a sequence. I welcome you all to this Battle of Fazilka, which we have titled as Battle of Fazilka Amidst Danger They Persevered. This has also been live telecasted on Calendary Award portal and YouTube. Of course, I have many people to thank for it. Our former director, Lieutenant General Dr. Subrata Saha, and of course, my panelists who we personally invited and they accepted. We were in talk with a lot of other people also. Somehow we could not collect all of them together. Some people due to their ill health and the prevailing situations. However, we will try to have a wholesome picture of how people saw the battle from their inside. As far as introduction to this battle is concerned, we all should be aware that Fazilka is a very important place in the map of India. Firstly, because it is the underbelly of the Suleiman K headworks, and Pakistan has always been very, very sensitive about it. Secondly, because it connects Rajasthan to Punjab and beyond, and border road runs almost parallel to the international border. I will not take much time except for saying that on the Pakistani side, there was 105 brigade, and on our side was 67 independent brigade. Both were seizing opportunities. We trying to probe the underbelly at Suleiman K headworks, while from the opposite side, they were very, very sensitive about this, and they wanted to preempt it. And today we have with us Lieutenant General BS Nagal, who was the wartime number 3 platoon commander in Alpha Company during the war. He will be briefly, introducing the whole battle, and he would also describe how Fort Jat undertook various operations, and also at the end give certain lesson learned. Lieutenant Colonel Sg Thatte, he is the wartime commanding officer of 15 Rajput. He will tell about the heroic tales of the defense of 15 Rajput. We also have Colonel P. Vijay Reddy. He was the wartime intelligence officer of 15 Rajput. He will tell about his experience and operations of 15 Rajput. And of course, a very special guest with us, Shri Singh Boparai, who was decorated with Kirti Chakra. And he was the wartime DM of Firozpur, of which Fazilka was a part. At the end, we will have a few words from a VC. I will not take much time, apart from already what I have told. I will hand over back to Kritika, and we will listen to our panelists who are there. At the end, all of you who may have questions, especially our students, may put it on the chat box, and our panelists will obviously make an attempt to answer to your question. Over to you, Kritika. Thank you very much.
Our first speaker is Lieutenant General BS Nagal, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, Sena Medal. He was the Commander-in-Chief of the Tri-Services Strategic Forces Command from 2008 to 2010. He was the first Army officer to hold the appointment. He was also the first Chief Strategic Program Staff under the Prime Minister's office from January 2011 to December 2012. He was also the former director of Center for Land Warfare Studies Clause in New Delhi from December 2014 to June 2018. He also commanded army formations at corps, division, and brigade level on the Western Front. The officer has commanded Forjat in Manipur, Nagaland in a counter-insurgency environment. He is an alumni of National Defense College, New Delhi, High Command course at Army War College, Mao, and Army Staff College at Kimberley, United Kingdoms. He took part in the Indo-pak War of 1971 Western Front, where he was wounded in action, and later he took part in Operation Vijay in 1999 and Operation Parakram from 2001 to 2002. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kritika. Good morning, everybody. I hope I'm audible. Kritika, you can tell me. Huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you're audible.
Right. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Kritika to help me with the slides, because I'm in Dehradun, and here the BSNL connectivity is poor at times. So maybe there could be a slip up. So I've requested her to show all the slides, and I'll of course intervene to tell her to take it forward. First slide, please.
So this slide, right?
It's not opening. I can't see any slide at the moment. No, before this, the first one, before this. The one before this. Okay. Yeah, this one. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, 50 years after the war, wish to reflect on the historical perspective of this particular battle. And of course, in doing so, it would be our aim to educate the future leadership of how things panned out, what were the good points and what were the problems, and therefore we could learn from it. And finally, of course, I say this, we will recount the heroism and the gallantry of the men who fought this battle. It is a very intense battle, and somewhere in the official history, it is mentioned that the casualties suffered in this brigade action exceeded the casualties suffered by 36th Division or even 54th Division in the Battle of Basantar, Shakargarh, those areas. And therefore, as I go through the battle, you will realize the intensity and the ferocity of the battle. But before that, what I'll do is I will run through various aspects of terrain, the enemy event, the actual deployment, the enemy plan or execution, what he did, and the conduct of battle. And of course, I've drawn my knowledge from various sources, the official history published by the MOD. I've spoken to British Chaudhary, the then brigade commander. I've spoken to Colonel Kocher, the then IO of 3 SM. And of course, there is an official account on the Pakistan side by Brigadier Farooq Afzal, who was a second lieutenant in this particular battle, and he's recounted the battle. And of course, many other interactions I've had at personal level. So next slide, please. Well, before I start my presentation, I wished to pay homage to the men who gave their life during this war at Fazilka. It is their bravery, it is their character, it is the courage they showed, the determination they had, the fortitude, the gallantry, the grit they displayed, the guts and resolve and willpower. And I'm saying, if you see, the topic is they persevered. And so here also they persevered against odd and deaths. This will unfold as Col Thatte, me, we all recount what happened. Because this fits into that famous charge of the Light Brigade saying, this is not to reason by, this is but to do and die. This will be reflected in the casualties which I will talk during the lessons learned. Next, please. Well, what was the concept of defense of Fazilka? What is today known as 16th Division was then known as Foxtrot Sector. And Foxtrot Sector was given the task of holding 3 fortress defenses, Fazilka, Abor and Ganganagar. But there was a difference of opinion between the Army Headquarters, Western Command on one side and GOC 11 Corps on the other side. Army Headquarters and Western Command wanted a forward defense close to the IB along the ditch cum Band, which is a very formidable obstacle on which I had worked for 14 days. GOC 11 Corps held a different opinion. He wanted to fight a tripwire battle on the border and fight his main battle at Fazilka. These two contradictory views ultimately reflected in the discussions between GOC 11 Corps, his sector commanders and his brigade commanders. And after a year of wargaming and discussions, there was a semi-compromised deployment and there was a vaguely disjointed defense which occurred. And this is the biggest lesson which emerged from the Battle of Fazilka, that when there is no convergence of views, when there is no concurrence of ideas, and the concept is itself debated, and the implementation is even worse. So, my view is things like this are bound to fail. And I will talk more of this a little later. Next slide, please. This is the official history map of the Battle of Fazilka. I will delve on more details later, but this is from the official history. It is indicative of the number of counterattacks that took place and what the enemy actually did on ground. So this is not a very clear map. However, I will use the Google Maps for greater clarity subsequently. Next, please. The enemy's deployment opposite us, or the deployment of his reserves, or the intentions were not very clear. Intelligence was not easily forthcoming. And this is from this particular slide is from the official history. I will talk of this more in the next slide. Next slide, please. The assessed deployment opposite Foxtrot sector, which runs from Fazilka to Ganganagar, was that there was 33 Infantry Division somewhere in depth. There was 25 Brigade somewhere in depth. 105 Brigade was deployed up front at Solebanki, and there were the Rangers and the Mujahids. So, in essence, in the defensive mode was one infantry brigade, and in the offensive mode was a division plus. But there were no concrete inputs as to the exact location of this force, and it generally said in the general area from Soleimani to Fort Abbas. Now, that's a huge area if you see the map. So it was vague. Next, please. Then there was an anticipation or an expectation or uh, unconfirmed view that one armored division could be in this area. One brigade X11 div could be in this area. There was an expectation or an assessment that even some elements of 6 armored div could come down to this area, provided northern Punjab was not threatened by the Indian Army. And there was no information about 7 div, but there was a view that it could come here. So if you see, overall, there is an infantry division plus, which was in the previous slide.
Sir, we can't hear you, sir. Just a second, sir. Sir, can't hear you, sir. Am I audible to you, sir? Sir, but I can't hear you, sir. If you can... Sir, am I audible to you? Saurav, is sir audible to you?
No.
So there seems to be some problem from your side. If you were just audible. Sir, try connecting from your phone, sir. Maybe there's some network issue. Joshi sir, am I audible to you? Am I audible to everyone else?
Yes, Kritika, you are audible.
Sir, no problem, sir. You can try connecting through your phone, sir. Sir, I have unmuted you, sir. You are on unmute, sir. Sir, you can try through your phone, sir. Or else, sir, what you can do is you can leave and rejoin again, or join through your phone, sir. So we can't hear you, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
So-
sir.
So I'm going
Okay.
to leave from my mobile. Leave from my laptop and I'll come onto my mobile. Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful, sir. No problem.
Okay. Can you now?
Sir, you can switch on your camera, sir.
It's on. It says.
All right.
It's not.
Sir,
Is it okay now?
yes, sir. But sir, can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
No, I can't see the PowerPoint.
So can you see it? I mean, I'm sure it must be showing on the Cisco Webex. You need to just slide and come on the main page of your
Yeah,
app.
now I can see. Now I can see. Yeah, okay. I can see. Right. Okay.
Wonderful,
Can you
wonderful.
hear me
No
now?
problem. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now yeah. So we'll go to the next slide now.
All right.
Okay. Now, having explained what the enemy was likely to do, or as we know later on what they were planning to do, so I now come to what India was doing in this sector. And the slide at the moment is from the official history, but I'll explain this in greater detail with more slides. So we can go to the next slide, please. Okay. So what was available to Fazilka sector is now listed out on this slide. There was 3 Assam, there was 4 Jat, there was 15 Rajput. These were the 3 infantry battalions. The 4th Infantry Battalion, that is 311 GR, came on December 7. There was a squadron of 18 cavalry which had T-54 tanks. There was 4 independent squadron which had Sherman tanks. There were 2 troops of ATGM from 70th Armored Regiment. There was a artillery regiment field, which is normal, a medium battery, and there were 2 BSF battalions. So this is the total force available to the brigade commander to deploy in the context of what I've explained was a concept which was not implemented in toto, but it was partially implemented. So next slide, please. Now this is the map which shows Fazilka, the border, and various other places. Now starting from the top right, there is a cross within a circle. Now this is the town of Fazilka, and here there was the brigade headquarters with 4 Jat in full, company of 15 Rajput, and certain other elements here. Right on top is a small semicircle. These were elements of 15 Rajput, because 15 Rajput had a responsibility up to there. Then you come to the middle and the front. Then you see a marking with 2 dashes. I'm talking more because there will be some civilians who won't understand. This is the deployment area of 3SM. Then you come to the lower area, you will find again 2 dashes. This is the deployment of 15 Rajput less 2 companies and BSF companies. So this is also a full-scale deployment. Now, this is the broad deployment. The front 2 elements were deployed on what was known as the ditch cum bandh, and it is a very formidable anti-tank obstacle. And then along the border, you see dots, which were the BOPs banned by the BSF. So this was the broad deployment, and the armored squadron was split into 2 parts. One was meant to be ahead of the ditch cum bandh, and some were north of Fazilka, and some were behind the ditch cum bandh. So this was the broad deployment of the brigade. Next slide, please. Now, having explained the broad deployment of the brigade, now 3SM had 3 companies which were ahead of the ditch cum bandh. And I will explain the ditch cum bandh a little later. So there was one company called Qadir Bakhsh Company, a Pakka Company, and a Churiwala Chisti Company. And then it had one company on the ditch cum bandh. And there were ad hoc platoons at 1 or 2 places. And there were 2 troops of armor ahead of the DCB. So this was the broad deployment of 3SM. I will now show this schematically. Next slide, please. So now if you see, on the top, there is a company with 1 dash. This was Qadir Bakhsh Company. Then right to the extreme left, you see another company. This is the Pakka Company. Then bottom, the front one is Churiwala Chisti Company. So these 3 companies were deployed not on the main ditch cum bandh, but up front. The lower 2 had ring bandhs around them. They were still under construction the day the war started. Now, if you see the second tier, this is the ditch cum bandh, where there was a company deployed in 2 blobs and an ad hoc platoon deployed on the right-hand side. So this is essentially the 3SM deployment, and the extreme left blob with single dash, there were 2 troops of armor. Actually, there was 1, but they were meant to be 2. Next slide, please. This is what Pakistan plan was, that they attacked up front with the whole brigade. All the 3 battalions were utilized by the brigade commander to attack. 105 Brigade had 6 frontier force, 18 Baloch, and 7 Punjab. And all the battalions attacked up front. What I'm showing you, the top 3 arrows are from 6 frontier force, and the bottom arrow is of 7 Punjab. And 18 Baloch was further lower. But since that battalion did not attack any place, they got lost. But ultimately, they occupied Churiwala Chisti. So this is the Pakistan attack plan as it unfolded on 3 December. Next, please. So what happened? On the night of 3-4 December, Pakistan attacked Qadir Bakhsh Company on the north, and Major Kongmin was holding this company. But ultimately, this company was overrun, and Major Kongmin, with some elements, fell back to the DCB after he had extricated the company from the defenses there. The second red arrow is the company which came and attacked the Beriwara Bridge, of which we will talk in greater detail later. The third arrow is 7 Punjab, which came and attacked Pakka, and it overran the company at Pakka. The company was decimated, and a fair number of prisoners of war were taken in from this company. The company commander survived and reached the battalion headquarters, but he died later on whilst he was taking a tank to assault some enemy positions. And the lowest company, which has got a Red Cross, was actually asked to withdraw on orders from the brigade. And hence, the 3SM actions of night 3, 4 are depicted over here. Then, early morning, the company which was at Churiwala Chisti, it fell back to the DCB. As it fell back, the commanding officer then asked this company on the DCB to move north. I've drawn a blue arrow which is going northwards, and it is 3 by 4 written over there. So this company moved on the night of 3-4. So this was the action which 3SM took. This company which moved north, at the tip of the arrow is where the Beriwala bridge is. This company was utilized to counterattack this particular lodgement of the enemy, and in this action, Major Kyangte lost his life. So 3SM essentially had 3 companies up front. All were withdrawn to the rear. One company launched a counterattack, but it could not succeed. So therefore, this is this basic story as far as 3SM is concerned. Next, please. When this particular action happened, the brigade commander ordered an immediate counterattack to be launched at Beriwala Bridge. Now, a word about Beriwala Bridge. The bridge was a class 9 bridge. It was defended by an ad hoc MT platoon of 3SM. Pakistan troops came silently along a track which came from the border to this bridge. This is the shortest route to the ditch cum Bandh as far as India is concerned. It is just about 1.5 kilometers, or even a little less than that. So the Pakistan 6th Frontier Force Company under Major Shabir Sharif came silently and mingled with the civilians who were returning in the evening after the field work. And in that camouflage, they were able to surprise the troops at the bridge. The demolition party which was there could not destroy the bridge, and hence this Pakistan company was able to capture the bridge and the shoulders of the DCB on both sides. Now, when this happened, 3SM was not very clear about what had happened as far as enemy action is concerned, but they knew the enemy had come and occupied certain parts of the DCB. And therefore, a counterattack was to be launched on the orders of the brigade based on information being fed by 3SM. So, 4 chart launched a counterattack on night 3-4, a counterattack on night 4-5, a counterattack on night 5-6. Then 15 Rajput launched a counterattack on night 8-9. And finally, 4 Jat launched another diversion attack on 13-14 December. Now, I will go through these attacks in a little more detail. Next, please. If you see, this is the terrain. It is totally flat. And the blue arrow depicts the direction of the counterattack on day 1. The top of the blue arrow is Beriwala Bridge. And the ditch cum Bandh is going towards the northeast and coming south from there. So it forms an obtuse angle which has an excellent field of fire. It's a ideal killing zone. And you can see a village to its east called Gurmukheda. So Pakistan troops were deployed on both sides of the bridge, but this information was not very well known to 3SM and neither to the brigade. And therefore, and the total distance of this blue line is approximately less than 1,000 meters. So if you see, it is an ideal killing ground. The band was 20 to 25 feet high. It had pillboxes made looking to the front, but it had concrete entrances from the rear, which were very, very formidable. Next slide, please. On the night of 3/4, Bravo Squadron less 2 troops under Major Bawa of 18 Cavalry and Delta Company of 4 Jat was asked to launch a counterattack on the enemy, which had captured certain areas on the Ditchkam Band. I mentioned earlier, in the fog of war, there was no clarity about how much area the enemy had captured, what was the exact extent, but enemy was firing from the bridge area, and there was confirmed information that enemy was located on the Ditchkam Band. Now, the blue arrow is the direction of the counterattack. At about 20 to 30 hours at night, Bravo Squadron and Delta Company had reached the point from where the counterattack was to start. Delta Company took about 15-20 minutes to organize itself for the counterattack, being in the FUP, because there was no classical FUP. It was an ad hoc FUP, and the CO 3SM was to brief the counterattack force of what was to be done. Now here the problem started, that the briefing which was done had 2 different versions which emerged later. The version by 3SM was, the CO told them that you should counterattack along the Ditchkam Band from south to north and capture the entire area up to the outfall where the last tip of the blue arrow is. The version of Bravo Squadron commander and Delta Company commander is that they were told that you go and capture, which is called the outfall point, and the creek bridge, which is the tip of the top arrow. So this confusion existed in the counterattack troops. Now, as the armor started advancing, where the tip of the first arrow is, 2 of its tanks were shot by the Pakistan forces which were deployed on the Ditchkam Band. This is also corroborated by Brigadier Farooq Afzal in his account of how this Havaldar and he himself took on these 2 tanks. The tanks caught fire because of the RL rocket launcher and the Energa, and the men were captured by the Pakistanis. So 2 tanks got destroyed here. So then Bravo Squadron veered to the right and went to this village Gurmukheda, where the second arrow finishes. And then he went towards the fall-off point where the tip of the third arrow is. And here the squadron commander's tank got bogged down in watered fields and he could not extricate it. And therefore, the armor actually was not able to effectively counterattack the enemy at the Beriwala Bridge. Delta Company followed the armor after a gap of 15 minutes. And somewhere in the region of the tip of the first arrow, they were fired upon from the left-hand side. And they had 25 casualties, killed or wounded. And the company then was disorganized. And hence, it took them 15 minutes to organize and reach the village Gurmukheda. And then they assaulted the outfall, which is the third arrow. And they captured the bunkers and the outfall and the creek bridge. And Delta Company was able to achieve this by 4 o'clock in the morning. But hereinafter, there was no replenishment to this company, no ammunition, because they had only carried on-man on pouch ammunition, and efforts were made to provide them replenishment, but because of enemy fire, they failed from this direction. Therefore, a decision was taken to supply from the north. Now, the north side, where I had explained, was the Qadir Baksh company of 3SM. They had been overrun. This information was not passed to Fort Jat or the brigade headquarters. So the F echelon in a truck with RCL jeeps, RCL and MMGs came from the north. They were captured by the enemy before they could reach the creek bridge. And therefore, this company had no ammunition, no replenishment throughout the day. And at night, after confusing orders, this company was withdrawn. Same time as this company was being withdrawn, Fort Jat was asked to launch a counterattack with 2 companies after these 2 companies were relieved by BSF at Fazilka. Next map, please. These 2 companies were not relieved by BSF till midnight. So at 12:30 past midnight, orders were given that these 2 companies were to move in vehicles to the FUP. I have drawn 2 arrows now, a light blue and a dark blue. The bottom is the FUP area. The light blue is Alpha Company and the dark blue is Charlie Company. Now, at this time, there were no tanks to lead the assault. The infantry was by itself. There was no support as far as fire base was concerned. There was no fire base. There was no the classical support to suppress the enemy was absent. So because they had got delayed, they reached the FUP at 2 o'clock. Heavy shelling took place when these 2 companies were at the FUP and some people were injured, including 1 person from my platoon. 3 o'clock, the light blue company commenced its attack. It was a 2 platoon up attack, and the enemy was firing from the Dishkam Band on the left and from the village. However, Alpha Company continued to advance, and after a few casualties, this village was captured. By 4 o'clock, this village had been captured by Alpha Company. And the company was doing reorganization when orders were given that the company was to now attack the Dishkam Band with the light blue arrows. So once again, this company at 4:15, between 4:15 and 4:30, launched a counterattack along the light blue arrow to the Dishkam Band. Left platoon was number 1 platoon, right platoon, the middle platoon was number 3 platoon, and the extreme right platoon was number 5 platoon. We all advanced up front in left platoon was extended front line. My platoon was echeloned and the right platoon was also echeloned. As we attacked, the left platoon came under very heavy fire and they suffered casualties and the platoon commander was injured and the platoon havildar died. So 1 platoon failed in the attack. However, 3 platoon captured its objective where the tip of the light blue arrow is, and 5 platoon captured the outfall point again. And therefore, at this point, I was getting ready to assault towards the bridge when I was injured. And after I was injured, my platoon consolidated itself on the Dishkam Band. By this time, the left, that is the dark blue arrow, the company commenced its counterattack to the Beriwala Bridge. It reached very close to the Beriwala Bridge, but due to very heavy casualties, this attack was repulsed, and this company then fell back to Gurmukheda and occupied defenses on the outskirts, on the periphery of Gurmukheda. This action was completed by 6 o'clock in the morning. Having failed, partially succeeded. This attack was not a failure, but a partial success, that the Northern Company, Alpha Company, had succeeded, and Charlie Company had now failed but come to Gurmukheda. Next slide, please. On the night of 5/6, Bravo company of 4th Jat was asked to counterattack Beriwala Bridge again. Major Narayan Singh was the company commander, and his company was to assault from Gurmukheda straight to Beriwala Bridge. Major Narayan Singh was a very, very brave officer. He led his company, and the company reached the Ditchkam Bandh. But by then, it had suffered many casualties. But Major Narayan Singh was then injured, but he continued the assault. He had a hand-to-hand fight with Major Shabir Sharif, who was the company commander of 6 FF at the Ditchkam Bandh. Both shot each other. Both succumbed to the injuries that they had got during this attack. Major Narayan Singh was given the Veer Chakra by the Indian government, and Major Shabir Sharif was awarded the Nishan-e-Haider, the highest award for Pakistan. Major Shabir Sharif's brother later on became the Chief of the Army Staff, General Rcl Sharif. This attack also failed because of the very heavy casualties, and thereafter 4th Jat consolidated around the enemy deployment on the Ditchkam Bandh. 4th Jat later on gave a firm base to 15 Rajput on night of 8-9 December for their counterattack, of which Col Thatte will speak. I will now talk of the diversionary attack of 13-14. Next slide, please. On the night of 13-14 December, 15 Rajput was to launch an attack on the north, which Col Thatte will speak of. 4th Jat was to launch a diversionary attack onto Beriwala Bridge. This was launched on the night 13-14. We suffered many casualties. Of course, it was not a success because the force level was not adequate. Three issues which I wish to highlight: that during these counterattacks, there was no tank fire or assault. During the rehearsals, we had been explained that in all counterattacks, the armor will lead the assault and infantry will follow and mop up what is left on the DCB, because there was no practice of bunker bursting drill or something like that. Secondly, there was no fire support which was effective on the linear obstacle, because the enemy had an excellent killing ground, because in the casualties that the brigade suffered, 233 people were injured by artillery and only 147 by small arms fire. Small arms fire was essentially to 4th Jat and 15 Rajput who were in the assault role. And therefore, there was no effective artillery fire on the Ditchkam Bandh. The enemy was never suppressed. He continued to fire throughout the war, throughout the battle. And incidentally, even the assaulting battalions did not create a fire base for themselves. Now, I will close here because now Col Thatte will speak of 15 Rajput. I will come back to talk about the lessons learned. So 4th Jat, they just keep this next last slide, please. 4th Jat, overall, we had 1 officer killed, 4 JCOs killed, and 64 Jawans lost their lives. And there were 7 officers wounded, 6 JCOs wounded, 164 Jawans wounded. And missing were 1 JCO and 13 Jawans. These were those Jawans who were bringing the replenishment and ammunition for Delta Company. They were captured by the enemy in the Nadir Baksh area. Next, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for the crisp and clear explanation. That was a lovely presentation. Moving on to our next speaker, we have Colonel Sg Thatte, who was born on 24th of March 1933. He joined the army on June 1954 and he passed from the Defense Service Staff College in 1968. He served, the units that he served were 17 Rajput, 11 Assam Rifles, 20 Rajput, 15 Rajput, where he was a commanding officer from 1971 to 1976. He retired from the army on March 1983. He has operational experience in Nagaland insurgency in 1955-57, India-China War of 1962, Indo-Pak War of 1965, Mizoram insurgency of 1967, Indo-Pak War of 1971, and civil experience where he worked as a personal and administrative manager in 5-star hotel Ritz, Sea Princess, and the Retreat in Mumbai from 1983 to 1991, and as a hotel consultant for Duke's Retreat, Khandala, and Holiday Inn, Surat from 1993 to 1997. His hobbies include mountaineering, music, and traveling. I must say that he is 88 years of age, but he's still very young at heart. You know, he does a lot of yoga and a lot of activities in his society. So over to you, sir.
Okay. I am Lieutenant Col SG Thatte, retired, speaking from Pune, Maharashtra. I wish to convey my compliments and best wishes to all those viewing this video.
Can you hear me, Vijay?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear
Okay.
you.
I wish to convey my compliments and best wishes to all those viewing this video. More than 50 years ago, in April 1971, I took over command of 15 Rajput Battalion in Govindgarh in Abohar area as part of the brigade. Fazilka, some 20 miles away from Abohar, is a very sensitive area located in Punjab. The town is just 6,000 meters from the border at its closest point. In 1971, population of Fazilka town was just around 40,000. It is necessary to know the geographical location and importance of this town to India to follow and understand the actions fought by our army in this area during 1965 as well as in 1971. I will display map of this area on the screen. You can see the map in front. This Fazilka, just above that you see that blue, that is the Satluj River flowing from northeast to southwest. And then you can see Pakka, where the battle was fought by 3SM. Then you see the Abor, the roads running northeast to Firozpur and east to Muktsar and beyond to Bhatinda, southeast to Abohar, and then it goes west to Ganganagar. Fazilka is an important business center and a known name in the world market for its richness in cotton. It is also an important communication center with roads leading to Firozpur in northeast, Malad, Bhatinda in east, and Abohar in southeast. Just across the international border in Fazilka area, Satluj River flowed northeast to southwest, passing through Suleimanki, which has a major headworks with an overbridge and a 19-20 feet long weir designed to pass a maximum discharge of 3,25,000 cusecs. Three major irrigation canals, namely Forwa Canal, Eastern Sadikia Canal, and Pakpattan Canal, take us from Suleimanki headworks, which is only 1,500 yards from the international border. Apart from irrigation, the canals act as defense obstacle system for tanks and vehicles. Pakistan cannot therefore afford to lose Suleimanki and must protect it at all costs. Sensing defeat in East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, Pakistan declared war with India on 3rd December 1971. It launched attack in Fazilka sector same evening. India-Pakistan war took place from 3rd December to 17th December 1971. Our brigade was given the task to defend Fazilka. This task was fully accomplished by the 3 battalions. The enemy had eyes on Fazilka during India-Pakistan War of 1965, as well as in 1971. In fact, on 4th December 1971, Pakistan announced on its radio that Fazilka has been captured. But the fact is that Pakistan Army could not even reach Asafwala near the border, miles away from Fazilka. Past history shows that at the start of a war, Pakistan is very active in Fazilka sector due to various reasons and due to its own compulsions. In 1965 as well as 1971, at the start of the war, it launched a preemptive action to provide protection to Suleiman Ki headworks, which is across Fazilka and Pakka on the Satluj River. Since war is always started by Pakistan, it has initial advantage as it can launch attack in the place of its choice. Our farmers from villages near the border were permitted by the civil authorities to cultivate their farms till start of the war. When war started and Pakistan started shelling, the villagers ran back. It was easy for Pakistan Army to follow these villagers running back to the bridges and capture part of our defenses on the Beriwala Band. But our troops have always stopped further advance of the Pakistan Army and never allowed it to come anywhere near Fazilka. During 1971 war, my battalion took part in defensive as well as offensive operations. The enemy never reached our defenses, so there was no defensive battle. The battalion was given tasks to mount 3 attacks. The first attack was termed as counter-attack to recapture the enemy-occupied Beriwala Band on the night of 8-9 December 1971. The objective was under enemy occupation since 3rd December and had been unsuccessfully counterattacked by other units with heavy casualties. The attack was launched along the narrow band, which was the only available approach. In the limited area, there was mix-up of troops and we suffered heavy casualties. It was a big jolt, adversely affecting morale and name of the battalion. I was greatly concerned. Something had to be done before the end of the war. During November 1971, after our defenses were ready, I had carried out extensive reconnaissance of our area and had Pakistan Army's Ghazi post in my mind. During 1965 war or in 1971, we had never carried out any offensive action inside Pakistan. Our new brigade commander had assumed command on 5th of the brigade on 10th December 1971. As such, he was not fully familiar yet with the area. After my battalion reoccupied defenses in Fazilka during the night of 9-10th December, brigade commander offered me an easy task on 11th December to capture and clear Muazzam village. The battalion was still under shock due to heavy casualties at Beriwala Band. I therefore asked for more time before the next operation. The task was allotted to another battalion who captured Muazzam but found only one Pak soldier cooking tea in the village. On 13 December, brigade commander asked me to attack and capture GG1 and GG2 border posts from where BSF had withdrawn. I suspected these posts to be unoccupied by the enemy. At this stage, instead of GG1 and GG2, I volunteered to take on Pak Ghazi posts located inside Pakistan. The brigade accepted my plan as phase 2 of the brigade plan to launch on the night of 13-14 December 1971. Phase 1 was yet another counterattack at Beriwala Band by another unit with casualties and no success. In phase 2, I was required to do my task with battalion less 2 companies and was not allowed full complement of my battalion. The attack had to be planned carefully. No frontal attack along the band, as this obvious approach was covered by heavy fire of the enemy. I planned an attack from the flank to achieve surprise and minimize our casualties. I arranged with the neighboring battalion near Muazzam to fire at edge hour towards Ghazi along Lande Band to create an impression that attack is coming along the Band. The fire was to be at an angle to ensure that assaulting troops were not hit. The forming a place was selected 200 yards from the objective. Nights in Punjab during December are dark and cold with heavy fog and mist. Visibility is restricted to 15 feet. Reaching the selected forming a place was a major problem. My intelligence officer, Captain P.V. Reddy, later Colonel, did a wonderful job by meticulously working out compass degrees and the steps to be taken to reach the forming a place to launch the assault. Single shells of artillery were fired intermittently on the registered target to guide and confirm that we were moving in the right direction. Complete radio silence was maintained throughout. The assault was launched at the given hour, and the enemy firing in the wrong direction was caught from behind. Hand-to-hand fighting broke out, at which Charlie Company Commander Major L.M. Bhatia was martyred. He was later decorated with Veer Chakra posthumously. The attack was a great success with minimum casualties. However, one enemy bunker on Lande Band, connecting northern village to the objective, was occupied by some Pak soldiers armed with machine gun, was blocking movement of our reorganization stores to the objective. A team was sent to clear this, which did not succeed. The second team under Lieutenant Gridpal Singh was sent to do the job. This team crawled to the enemy position and cleared it. However, Lieutenant Gridpal Singh was fatally hit by a burst of enemy fire just outside the enemy bunker. He was decorated with Mahavir Chakra posthumously. I will now display the sketch showing direction of attack on Ghazi. You can see Salim Shah village, and southeast of that is Fazilka. So our defenses were there. From the defenses, from Fazilka, we moved along the track, then on to Muazzam, which was captured by another battalion, which I described earlier. They were on the Band, and the Band running it left is the Lande Band, dotted lines. So we go cross this Band and then onto the FUP. You can see the FUP with those marks where the forming a place, and we took position and then we went into the attack. We captured one Sherman tank, one 6-pounder gun, anti-tank gun, 2 medium machine guns, 3 light machine guns, 13 Sten guns, 35 rifles, 1 2-inch mortar, 1 rocket launcher, a lot of ammunition, radio equipment, 1 jeep, and 25 Pakistani soldiers, including 3 officers. An exhibition of the captured arms, ammunition, and equipment was organized after the war for citizens of Fazilka. Many senior formation commanders, including Lieutenant General K.P. Kendit, Lieutenant General T.K. Raina, Lieutenant General M.C. Rowley, and Major General Ram Singh paid visit to the exhibition. I will now show you photographs of the equipment, arms and equipment that we captured. This is the captured Park Jeep Gilgit 73. You can see the number plate with my officers. These are the weapons captured, machine guns, other weapons, and radio sets. There's a lot of ammunition along with these boxes, which are not on show here. Next. This is the Sherman tank that we had captured, and another tank was destroyed on the objective itself. So this Sherman tank was subsequently displayed in Fazilka. Next. This is the 6-pounder anti-tank gun, which we had captured and which was in the exhibition, displayed in the exhibition. I would like to narrate an interesting incident during the attack. Following our success, the troops were rounding up and disarming the enemy, taking them prisoners. They were also engaged in collecting weapons, ammunition, and equipment. My intelligence officer, Captain Vijay Reddy, had accompanied the assaulting companies to guide them from forming a place to the objective. I waited in the SUP with constant radio contact with Captain Reddy. A situation on the objective, as situation on the objective stabilized, I decided to move on to the objective. When I reached the objective area, I saw a small party of 3-4 men from Delta Company carrying to evacuate one of its wounded soldiers. They entered a park bunker to take break for a few minutes to give first aid to the bleeding soldier. I also entered the bunker to talk to the wounded soldier and console him. I was informed that the wounded was Sipahi Nagar Muhammad, a soldier from Delta Company, my Delta Company. While talking to him, I addressed him by his name 2 or 3 times. At that very moment, I realized someone was shuffling in the corner of the bunker. I lit the torch to see his face and found him to be a Pak soldier. He was armed with a Sten gun. My men immediately pounced on him and disarmed him, as potentially he could cause us harm. On checking, we found him to be Lance Naik Muhammad Sadiq, belonging to 269 Signal Company of Pakistan Army. On disarming, he was totally dumbfounded, flabbergasted, and shocked to find that the troops with me were Muslims. Frightened and perplexed, he was shivering as he feared for his life. He was taken a prisoner and sent back to be handed over to military police at brigade headquarters. In due course, these 25 prisoners were repatriated and handed back to Pakistan by our government. I am sure Lance Naik Muhammad Sadiq must have narrated his experience of shock and surprise to his colleagues and villagers, particularly his brush with Indian troops of co-religion. In the third operation, we recaptured without opposition our BSF vacated border posts GG1 and GG2, which were offered to me for capture on the 13th, just before the ceasefire on 17 December 1971. The battalion won 4 gallantry awards, including 1 Mahavir Chakra and 1 Veer Chakra. Wars are rare in the life of a battalion. There has been no war since 1971, although very severe isolated warlike actions have been fought in Kargil and recently in Ladakh. The battalion's performance and achievements live with it till the next war. The battalions fight and make supreme sacrifices to uphold their names in service of the nation. They set example for future generations. Fazilka is a holy land for 15 Rajputs, as it was our place of action where our officers, JCOs, and soldiers sacrificed their lives for the nation. During the war, my battalion suffered heavy casualties in officers. 6 officers out of 16 officers when we started the war were martyred and 5 officers were wounded. There were heavy casualties in men too. I bow my head in remembrance of those martyred in 1971 in defense of Fazilka and pray God to grant peace to their souls. With this prayer, I come to the end of my talk. I thank Colonel Deepak Joshi, Director in charge, SISDSS, Rashtriya Raksha University, Gandhinagar, and Mrs. Kritika Patil for giving me an opportunity to be part of the program. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful and such a passionate talk, sir. I'm very, very sure that all of us have so much to learn from you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. That was a wonderful talk, sir. Thank you. Colonel Thatte is of 88 years of age, and I've talked to him multiple times, and he's so passionate and so inspiring. We always have so much to learn from you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you to you, sir. We will always seek inspiration from you, sir. So with your permission, can we move on to the next speaker, sir?
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Dear Colonel Reddy, my IO in 71 war. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Colonel P. Vijay Reddy, an alumni of the National Defense Academy, Colonel Reddy was commissioned into the 15th Battalion of the Rajput Regiment in June 1970. Colonel Reddy's military education includes all the basic courses, the Staff College course in Wellington, Nilgiris, the SC and HC courses, and the Command and General Staff course in the USA. He holds an MSc degree from the Madras University, MS from North Central University, Kansas, USA, where he majored in military art and science. MPhil from Ahilya Devi University in MP, and a master's in HRD from Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, USA. A postgraduate degree course he did after retirement. Colonel Reddy commanded 15 Rajput on the LOC and took his unit to battle during ceasefire violation. He has extensive operational experience and has been an instruction in the infantry school and the Defense Service Staff College. He sought premature retirement to attend to personal problems and worked in corporate sector in India and the USA. Post-retirement, Colonel Reddy settled in Bangalore with his wife Aruna. His sons Lalit and Sahitya are in corporate sector in the USA. Colonel Reddy is a golfer. He likes music, traveling, and archaeology. So over to you. Thank you, sir. Sir, can you hear us? Sir, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now we can hear you, sir. You were on mute, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now, Kritika?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you crisp and clear.
Okay. Thank you very much for that introduction. Good morning, everybody. I was Colonel Thatte's IO in 1971 war in Fazilka. What I'm going to do is talk about what I saw as a second lieutenant, a 22-year-old youngster, what I saw, what I experienced, and some of the lessons which I personally learned during 1971. I'm also going to talk about a little bit of what I fathomed through hindsight after the war. To begin with, there's this little map there. Before I touch upon the map, I've always believed that the old adage of truth being the first casualty in war is very true. So I've always decided that when I speak or write about the war, I will speak brutally honestly so that lessons can be learned for posterity. So if I offend anybody inadvertently, I, at the outset, would beg their pardon, but I tuned myself to be absolutely honest, and that is what I will be today. If you can see the map, first I'll talk about the Beriwala Bridge attack that Colonel Thatte brought out. We attacked from a northerly direction because that was the only way to attack. General Nagal brought out that they had made a firm base for us at the creek bridge. So we went up to the creek. I did not have to mark an FUP, etc., like a traditional attack would be, because we already had the firm base, which was very close to the objective, which was manned by 4 Jat. We went in to that particular firm base, and here I'd like everyone to realize that on the home side of the ditch cum band, there is a track which is between 10 and 12 feet in width,
where a recoilless rifle, a gun jeep could move from one bay to the other. This was called the Rcl Track. No more than 6 people could line up. If you take a body of a human being, a soldier, with all his equipment, you must give him at least 2 feet to go forward. So on a 12-foot band, you wouldn't have more than 6 people that could go. And like General Nagal brought out very clearly, it was something like the charge of the Light Brigade. And the enemy in this particular place was located on a U shape. So from wherever he shot, we would get killed. And everybody of 15 Rajput, each company had to go there. And at any one time, you had something like about 200 people on the band. You can imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if you have 200 people on a track which is 12 feet, of course, on the entire length of it, one shell is enough to cause maximum casualties. One burst from an enemy LMG automatic weapon can kill people, which is exactly what happened with us. I must add here that the brigade commander, Brigadier Chaudhary, and the GOC Foxtrot sector, General Ram Singh, were extremely brave people. They came on to the objective to encourage us and have us go forward. But while we were doing that, we lost, both the company commanders were killed, the company officer was killed, and the morale obviously was absolutely low, and the attack was petered off and we could make no more headway. Colonel Thatte asked me to measure how much we had captured. I ran and walked along the areas we captured till I went forward and met one of our Lance Naiks, Nani Gopal Das, who had captured a bunker and had an LMG of the enemy with him. The total number of steps that I had taken were 155, which I had recorded, assuming that each step would be about 2.5 feet, because I was crouching and going quickly. We would have captured something like about 300 to 350 feet, and that's it. So on a 12-feet track, this was miserable, and this is one lesson to be learned, that like General Nagal brought out, and I'm sure he'll talk about it more, there was no point banging our head against something which was already impossible to capture. Since we had already achieved the aim of stalling the enemy and not letting them come beyond the band, the task was done. So I don't know why people were sent again and again for counterattack. That's a major lesson which I thought was a failure of senior leadership in the Beriwala attack. Thereafter, as Colonel Thatte mentioned, the Ghazi attack, Colonel Thatte decided very wonderfully to go behind, and I marked the FUP, I marked the route, and I put unidirectional lights so that Charlie Company and Delta Company could follow and come to the FUP. At a certain point near the FUP, I completely lost, it was a pitch dark night, I lost direction in the sense I couldn't spot the objective. I relayed this back to Colonel Thatte, and he had artillery fire come down on the enemy post Ghazi, and with the flashes of the shells landing, I could easily make out where the objective was. I made minor adjustments, and then I marked the start line for both Charlie and Delta Company. Charlie Company is the one that charged into the attack. Late Major Lalit Bhatia was so courageous. The lesson I learned here is the troops were already demoralized after what happened in Beriwala. The company was depleted. The first company commander who led the company in Beriwala, late Major Ghosh, had died. The company officer was wounded. In spite of all these disadvantages, late Major Bhatia motivated his troops, did extremely well, and led the charge, which is why we succeeded. In the heat of the moment and in that Josh, I went along right after Charlie Company onto the objective. The other company, Delta Company, which was supposed to fetch a fish, up rather late. Again, I guess these are the vagaries of war, while that company came a little late. However, we had captured the post. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what happened here is something which I drew a great lesson. instead of being dynamic and thinking about exploiting these successes, making use of another battalion which was fresh and sitting right there, 3rd Battalion, 11th Gorkhas, all the senior officers came to look at the 25 prisoners we captured and all the arms and ammunition as if they were coming to a zoo to see animals. In the morning, during first light, when late Major Bhatia died about 10 feet from me, I was shattered. He was my hero, and he was somebody whom I had the greatest respect for. And I had decided at that time that when I get married and if I have a son, I will name him after Lalit Bhatia. I want to very proudly tell you that my older son, who was born in 1982, is Lalit Reddy. Back to the Ghazi post, the enemy started counterattacking us at about 12:30 in the afternoon, when all the seniors were still sitting on our post, admiring the weapons that were captured, etc., etc. Our troops started falling back. And ultimately, by about 4:30 in the evening, we fell back onto Mosum. The area that was captured was lost. 311 GR was not used. So a fresh battalion not being used is a very big disadvantage that we went through. A couple of other little lessons which I learned, ladies and gentlemen, are very practical lessons which I'd like to share with you. I think the civil administration and the civil mechanism in Fazilka had a lot to be desired. I'm not saying this in any derogatory manner. I had the proud privilege of seeing Mr. Boparai at close range, a tall, very handsome Sikh gentleman who used to come very often. I don't know what the compulsions were. I don't know what the political aspect to this is. I wish we had evacuated our civilians from the border back behind the DCB. We would have been very, very lucky. We would have saved our casualties. Now, somebody might turn around and ask, how do you know when the enemy is going to attack? So how can you move civilians back? We had one great advantage. We knew what is happening in Bangladesh. In September, we had marched into Bangladesh. By October, we were very clear that Pakistan will open the western border. That is when we should have evacuated our civilians. What happened because we didn't evacuate them? As they rushed back on the 3rd, when the first shelling started, Pakistanis came along with them, as brought out by General Malik and as brought out in that book which Farooq Afzal has written. Not only that, the minefields which we laid in front, I used to maintain a little book. There were 6 animals which walked into the minefields in that span of 2 months and they blew up. Pakistanis saw all that. So they knew the design of our minefields. We had to make lanes in the minefields to allow civilians to go through them adjacent to their villages. Pakistanis observed that. Afzal actually says he knew exactly where the lanes were. When they came into attack, he said not a single casualty occurred on the minefields because they knew where the mines were. The minefield design was known, and we couldn't help it because the civilians hadn't been evacuated. Now, there was very little coordination between the Canal Department and the army. I wish there was more coordination. They should have shared the drawings with us. One of the lessons we learned here is the aqueducts, which were blown up along with the bridges. Because the aqueducts were blown up, the water seeped and came out both on our home side and the far side of the DCB. The water rushing into the home side went into the cotton fields, and therefore when the tanks finally went into the counterattack, they got bogged down very badly in that water. There was no need for those aqueducts to be blown up, but in the fog of war, that is what happened. One more little point which I learned. When we captured Ghazi, we also captured a number of suitcases full of clothes. We found that those clothes were stitched in Fazilka. They had labels of the Fazilka tailor shops. So obviously the Pakistanis had come, somebody had come into Fazilka. Who allowed them? Was it the BSF? I don't want to cast any aspersions, but somebody had definitely not done their job on the border. Lastly, the army headquarters. Now, you see, In 1965, Pakistan had one particular battalion, 10 Punjab, 10th Battalion of the Pakistan Punjab Infantry. The commanding officer of that battalion was Lieutenant Colonel Amir Hamza, who was decorated in 1965. The same Amir Hamza was a brigadier in 1971, and he was the commander of 105 Brigade. He knew our area thoroughly because in 65 they came in, they walked around, they came in right till Sabuna Drain, which was behind the distributory. Those days there wasn't a distributory in 65. And they stayed there for 5 to 6 months before the land was handed over to us. So he knew it perfectly well. How come our army headquarters did not post somebody from 65 to come into this particular area in 71? If not post somebody, at least have someone who was there in 65 to come and brief people in 71 or in any theater that they were part of. This was another lesson we learned. Two other little things that happened, ladies and gentlemen. When I was returning from Mahar Sona about 7 days before the war, I suddenly, me and Captain Pandale, one of our officers, we were coming back from Mahar Sona. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening, and suddenly there was noise in the bushes. We stopped, and who did we see? We saw a smuggler. We caught him. We brought him back to our brigade headquarters. He kept begging us to leave him. He had watches on his shoulders. He was a smuggler. He had about 10 watches that he had kept on his shoulder. When we brought him back, very correctly, Colonel Thatte said, hand him over to the civil police and get their signature. We blindfolded him. We took him to the civil police. And the civil police got so annoyed with us. They said, you are creating more work for us. You should have given him to the BSF or you should have shot him on the border. Is that something that we should do? Shouldn't we have made use of that fellow to find out about the enemy or other smugglers? Couldn't we have convinced them to show us routes, take our recce patrols across the border and bring us? Nothing. No information was given by them. I mean, we never made use of smugglers, which I think is a big lesson. Also, right after the war, just about a month after the war, again, suddenly on the border towards GG1, we caught 6 Bengalis. These were Bengalis from East Pakistan who were working with West Pakistan's actors and actresses and big shots. One was a driver, one was a fellow who was a cook. They were brought, their bosses told them, okay, you go back now. You can go via India and go back. East Pakistan has now become Bangladesh, whatever. How did they come into us? When we caught them, and they said they walked into us from their Rangers post to our BSF post at them. So obviously, the BSF had some sort of a relationship with the Rangers across the border, which was a very sad state of affairs. So these are the things that I learned as a second lieutenant during the war, and I thought I'd share with you. Thank you very much. I'm done, Kritika. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, I'm done.
Sorry, sir, I just lost you for a couple of seconds. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
There was some sort of, sir, thank you so much for that candid and honest, presentation. That it was really, really wonderfully spoken, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sir, with your permission, I would like to move on to the next speaker.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we have with us Shri Singh Boparai, Kirti Chakra, and retired officer from the IAS. He was born on 23rd of June, 1942. He's a IAS from 1964 batch, Punjab cadre. The posts that he held were Deputy Commissioner Patiala, Deputy Commissioner Firozpur, Commercial Consular Embassy of India, Moscow during USSR, Secretary to Government of Punjab, Secretary to Government of India, and he retired in 2002 as the Secretary Planning Commission for the government of India. After retirement, he was the Vice Chancellor to Punjabi University, Patiala from 2002 to 2007. Sir, over to you, sir. We look forward to listening to your talk.
Thank you very much, Kritika ji, and thanks also to Colonel Joshi for dusting me, bringing me out of a shelf and putting you before all these old gentlemen who have fought so bravely, probably the most ferocious battle of that war. Well, I came to Firozpur district on 1st September 1971. That was just almost exactly 3 months before the war started. It was a big district. It was the biggest in Punjab. About 5 subdivisions were there. I had the maximum army in my district, 4 divisions, including the 1st Armored Div. So those 3 months were spent in just running around, knowing my officers, knowing people, getting them into the local offices and so on, or the town halls, talking to them about this and that, visiting all the formations, getting to know the chief commanders there, and asking them whatever we can do. I can very proudly say that whatever was demanded of me, at least, was never denied. It was all done. And I'll answer to the 2 or 3 points raised by Colonel Reddy also. You see, it was clear from the very start that our most vulnerable point is Fazilka. Firozpur, my district headquarters, is protected by a great river, the Satluj. And Fazilka has a land border with Pakistan. So it was quite clear right in the beginning. It so happened that I was in Fazilka when the war started. It happened like this, that as I was saying, that we never denied anything to the army, whatever they wanted. General Kalkat came to replace General Bakshi. When General Bakshi got blown up, he is the one who asked me for smugglers. He wanted to find out the ways for going into Pakistan and that kind of thing when he arrived. We took them out from the jail because they'd been put under, in the jails under the National Security Act or something. And we put them in touch with the army for whatever they wanted to know. I do not know what their conversation was. When General Kalkat wanted the sarkanda cut, the elephant grass, we got people together to have the grass cut. Now, why were the civilians not moved out? I'm afraid our instructions were to let them stay wherever they are so that no panic is shown and created. These were our standing instructions all through. I violated 2 or 3 of those, frankly, because people across the river in Firozpur were very vulnerable. It was just a pocket of 2 mile depth and therefore very vulnerable. I told them to come back, but they had come out 3 or 4 times earlier too, because all clouds had been gathering for 3 or 4 months. And they did not listen to me when the war started, and they came back through the river. They walked through the river or swam through the river after the war started. So in Fazilka, for example, we were asked to dig. There was an anti-tank ditch. Now, whether it was a subwater drain, whether it was something else, I really now don't remember. But the budget had run out with the brigade at Fazilka. They asked me that if we can help them to extend that a bit as an anti-tank ditch. I had a very fine officer at Fazilka, the subdivisional magistrate, Mr. K.C. Mahajan, who is decorated too in that war. He got a Shaurya Chakra. I spoke to him. He said, sir, no problem. They got the civilians together. They got the machinery. They collected all the fuel, etc. And they dug up a 900-meter long anti-tank ditch. I was told it was an effective anti-tank ditch, which they had dug up. Then Brigadier Chaudhary asked me for entertainment. There was no entertainment. The cinema had just got burnt, so happened. I called the cinema owner. I said, look, they need some entertainment and let's do something. He said, sir, law doesn't allow me. I said, don't bother about the law. I will take the responsibility. You run one show for yourself and one show for the army every day. And so happened, the first show was to happen that evening, that afternoon, when that inaugural of the cinema was to be done. Brigadier Chaudhary, very friendly person, very, friendly, very outgoing. He rang me up. He said, why don't you come for this inaugural show? And I ran. Anybody remembering ever, anybody calling, we just ran. We were so excited about all this. I ran there. We were still in the cinema watching the inaugurated show when there was a sound, some shells bursting. This is the 3rd of December. To a man, people got up in the cinema, just the sound of the shells. They had been so much attuned to something happening on the border that the very first sound they all ran. I was very astonished. I ran in the balcony, I ran to the front. I said, sit down, baith jao, koi kuch nahi. And they all sat down. The film again started. But then again, there was some shelling. I think those were anti-aircraft guns, because when I came out, I saw the puffs in the sky. I think they were anti-air force, anti-aeroplane shots being fired. Well, brigade commander went over to the brigade headquarters. We went to the town because the evacuation had to take place. The evacuations plans had been finalized in the last 3 months that I had come over, got them approved from the government and so on. But the remarkable thing, reality is so different. When we went out into the city, my God, these streets were full. Everybody on a scooter, on a rickshaw, on a cycle, on a bullock cart, on everything. People were so ready for the forthcoming war that in 2 hours, a city of 40,000 people or so was vacant. In 2 hours, the Fazilka city was vacant. We were left with just 70 people whom we would gather at night in the Sadar Thana, and there we would spend the night with them. For about 30 hours, one had not slept. So on the 4th, I did not rush back to Firozpur, no. I thought I was needed there. So next day, after we not slept for 30 hours, so after lunch, SDM said, so why don't you lie down? I lay down, slept for 1 hour. When we were woken up by the commandant of the BSM, I forget his name now, but I thought he was a lazy bum. I had met him earlier. So he was there with his jeep at the SDM's office, and he said, sir, the enemy is coming from this side today. They're going to encircle Fazilka, and Fazilka is going to fall. And surprisingly, I looked into his jeep when I was very surprised to see he had loaded all his kitchen utensils in that gunny bag, and he had them at the back of his official jeep, ready to run, even with the utensils, utensils of the kitchen. Our SSP, who was a very friendly person, Mr. Ravikant Sharma, and we were always together. We were really called Ram and Lakshman. And he said before the war, he said, what about our houses? I said, Ravi, if our district goes, let our household also goes. We will not lift a thing. And we did not. And here was the commandant of the BSF with his kitchen utensils in the back of his jeep and giving us the information that Pakistan was going to come and Fazilka is going to fall. We straight away went, this must be late in the afternoon. We went to the brigade headquarters, sat with Brigadier Chaudhary. When the dusk fell, one JCO came running. He said, sir, the enemy has come from this side and they have cut off the Firozpur road, which is our right of Fazilka as we face Pakistan. That road that they have come there and there's firing going on there. After some time, a captain comes running and he says, sir, the enemy has gone on to the Malot road, which is behind us. Just imagine. And at that time, Brigadier Chaudhary rang up one or two places, says, start withdrawing. We will fight inside Fazilka. And I now don't remember the time, how much time had elapsed and so on. I was still sitting with Brigadier Chaudhary when a call came direct from the army commander. He said, nobody is withdrawing. You'll fight wherever you are and we don't know withdrawal. General Chaudhary immediately rang up those two places. In one place, they had even started withdrawing and said, no, call them and fall back. We have to fight wherever we are. I then went to the police station, sat there, and we had a powwow actually, the SSP, I, the SDM, Mr. Kailash Mahajan, and there was DSP, Mr. Divanchan Sharma, as to what is our approach now. So the DSP said, we can go for the night and come back in the morning. I said, no. Straight away, I said, no, we cannot do that. We are required here and we must stay here. And nobody countermanded me, nobody contradicted me, and it was the decision was taken to stay there. At that time, a call came from the telephone exchange people. Somebody on the line, obviously whoever was the spokesperson, he spoke to the SDM, and the SDM told me, sir, that they want to leave. It's very dangerous. They said, telephone exchange people are always listening to every conversation going on. So they knew everything. And said, sir, it's very dangerous for us. And he did not listen to the deputy commissioner. Sorry, to the SDM. Then SDM says, sir, मान नहीं रहा है. तो मैंने कहा ठीक है, नहीं मानता मैंने पढ़ा telephone. I took the phone from him. So I argued with him. I said, look, I should be in Firozpur. I am not there. I'm here because of you people, because we must provide whatever we can, whatever is needed, the electricity, the other civil supplies, the army, the hospital, the Bijli wala, the telephone exchange. Everybody has to work. Everybody has to be here. We have to give whatever support we can. He said, no, sir, it's very dangerous. We are going away. At that time, I told them, I said, look, next time I hear you say that, I will personally come and shoot you. There was total silence on the other side. Nobody said anything. And I'm very proud to say that we did not run. At that time, soon after, there was a call from the chief secretary. They must be naturally knowing everything there at their levels as to what is happening. And the chief secretary told me, he said, Swaran, you go back to Firozpur. Your headquarters is there, and you go back there. I said, sir, in Firozpur, in my opinion, is safe because there's a great river in between Pakistan and India, and Firozpur city, not India, but Firozpur city. And the bridge got blown off on the very first night, accidentally or purposely. In any case, in my opinion, it was well done. So Firozpur is safe. There's an additional deputy commissioner there. I'm in touch with him from time to time, and there's nothing bad happening there, needing my help. But here I'm needed, and I will, if you do not mind, I will stay. The chief secretary had known me earlier for the last about 6 months, and he agreed. He said, all right, Swaran, good luck. Soon after, advisor Mr. ITN Sahi, Punjab was under governor's rule at that time, and advisor was an ICS officer, Mr. ITN Sahi, who had come from UP. He was like our chief minister. He said, Swaran, you go back to Firozpur. I said, sir, I'm needed here. That's why I'm here. He said, it's an order, you go back. I said, sir, I am very sorry, I apologize, but I'm not needed at Firozpur. I think I'm needed here. I'm keeping the civil administration, everyone here, so that whatever is needed, we can provide. And so there the talk ended, and I stayed on. That night, I had spoken to them. The first counterattack was to take, I think probably this was the second counterattack that was to take place that night, the night of the 4th and 5th. I'd spoken to Chaudhary. I said, we were on first name basis. I said, Sujit, do you think I can go and see the fireworks today when you counterattack? He said, okay, we'll talk to the GOC when he comes. And the briefing was at the Canal Rest House. We joined them there. And GOC said, Swaran, you want to go? I said, sir, yes, if you permit me. He said, all right, we'll go. He got briefed. When he got briefed, he got up when he had to go. Now, what had happened before the war started on this side, General Ram Singh, the GOC, had lost his son-in-law 3 weeks earlier on the eastern side of the battle of the war. And I'd seen him so many times and never mentioned to me even once that his son had died. He used to take long walks. I had gone on walks with him, and he never mentioned it. बहुत पाठ करते थे पंजाबी विच कहंदे, and he was a firm believer in God. So when he got up, and we got up with him to go, he said, Swaran, if something happens to you, it will be on my mind. And I said, look at this man. Never talked about his son-in-law, and he's bothered about me. I said, sir, it's fine. You go ahead. I will not go. I think in an hour or 2 hours, he was back there with his 3 bullets. And do you know who operated? Our civil hospital. Dr. Garg operated. My father was in Director Health Services, and he recommended to him for a Shaurya Chakra. Dr. Garg also got a Shaurya Chakra. For staying on duty, the GOC with his 3 bullets, he was treated by the civil. And I was there when he came out of the operation theater. He began to get up from the trolley that he was brought on. And the Dr. Garg said, sir, no, lie down. General Ram Singh said, doctor, inside the operation theater, I was under your orders. Now you are under my order. So he told them to put him in the jeep. He sat in the jeep and he went back to the same spot where he had got injured. That is what I came to know. So that is how the second night was. And after that, I had no problem. I thought my administration knew how we have to behave, and there's no fear there. So on the third morning, I left for Firozpur, and that is how it was. And in my mind, whenever I remember those people at that time, whenever I used to come before the war to the Canal Rest House, one Major Ghosh was deployed there. And I would sit with him, have a cup of tea. And he had a photograph of small photograph of his daughter, which he used to put in his purse. He said, sir, when I was on the eastern side, my daughter is born. I have not seen her, but when all this is over, I will go and see her. He never got to see his daughter. Next time I came, he was not there. I'm told he's still missing. His probably body was not found. Also, somebody told me that he is regarded as missing. I do not know this. I heard recently. But anyway, when I came next time, I was told that he is no more. War is a terrible thing, but a lesson which I can share is that when that JCO came running, when that captain came running to the brigade commander, there was not a single question. Who has seen him? How many are they? What are they carrying? What is their transport? What is their armament like? What do they look like? Have you seen him? There's no question. Only a fool does not fear. But if you are cool, if you just kept your cool, everything comes into place. The right things come into place. Your mind works. And the second lesson is that the fear is reflected, the best or the worst, in your face. And it's so bloody infected. It's the most infectious thing, the fear. You see somebody running and you catch that disease. If you're not careful, you will be as afraid as that fellow, who may not even be knowing the circumstance or that he is reporting. The third thing that I want to say very gratefully, that the man management in the army is the best. I have, so to say, sat at the feet of 4 generals, very generous to me, very loving to me. I had great equations with them and thoroughly enjoyed working with them. And I'm glad that they taught me man management. Thank you very much once again. Inni meri baat utton pegi raat, as they say in Punjabi, all that. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, sir, for that very, very insightful narration. Thanks a lot, sir. With your permission, we would like to move on to the last speaker, who will, give a bit of lessons from the battle. He'll give a bit of conclusion. General Nagal. Yes, sir. So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Sir, but we can't see you, sir.
And I can see myself. I don't know about you. So let's see. Can you see me on the mobile now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can see you.
Okay. So what I'll do is, okay.
Sir, can you hear us?
I can.
All right. Can General Nagal hear us?
Yeah, let me do this. Okay.
Okay, sir. Sir, I've unmuted you, sir.
Yeah. No. See, I know. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. So I'll request you to show my slide again, right?
Can you see it,
Okay.
sir?
Yeah, I can see. I can see the slide now. Okay. Before I actually go to the lessons, Two, three things I want to mention because in the short span of time, I didn't have enough to say about certain amount of bravery and heroics because, I was concentrating on the bigger parts. Few names I will mention from Forge Art who stand out. First, I mentioned Major Narayan Singh already, who was an extremely, extremely brave officer who died on 6th December fighting Major Shabir Sharif. My only regret is that Shabir Sharif got the highest award and Major Narayan only got the Veer Chakra. I wish he had got at least a Mahavir Chakra, if not a Paramveer Chakra. Second, Forge Art got 5 Veer Chakras, 1 Sena Medal, and 1 mention in dispatches, which to my mind is inadequate compared to the bravery, the gallantry, the courage, the determination, what the men showed on the ground. And the last compliment I wish to give is to the doctor during the war. His name is Captain Khanna. He left the army very early. He's now settled in Amritsar. But I showed you the casualties that we had, more than 170. And mind you, he treated each and every one of us with the same diligence, a smiling face. He never showed his tiredness. And mind you, the bulk of the casualties came within 72 hours. So I salute Captain Khanna for the work that he did. Now coming to the lessons. Next slide, please. Now, I wish to say that I am not criticizing anybody. I am not being hypocritical. I am not castigating anybody. I am just giving you the lessons which one sees as a senior officer, because these individual stories are far too many for me to recount. But also I must say that because we did not succeed fully in Fazilka, there has been extreme criticism over here. And the sayings which I've got on the slide, success had many fathers and failure none. This was the fate of the brigade commander. Victory as 100 fathers, defeat as an orphan. So therefore, the brigade, no theatre honors, no recognition to anybody excepting a few gallantry awards, which they could not have denied because it was on ground. So everybody wants to take credit for success, but nobody wants to accept responsibility for failure. And this is true for Fazilka, excepting for the brigade commander and the commanding office. Excepting for the brigade commander, nobody else was blamed for anything. And the brigade commander was singled out, which I think was unfair, because the sector commander, the corps commander, everybody had a role to play in what happened. Next slide, please. Now, the biggest problem was the defensive mindset in the corps brigade to fight as Fortress Fazilka. The leadership must be faulted for allowing faulty deployment and premature withdrawal and destruction of bridges. The problem emanated from the concept of operation. If the corps commander had a concept of operation, then there must have been a very detailed pattern of operation for him to enunciate, because the corps instructions never spoke like that. Because everybody should have been told how to fight, when to fight, where to fight, with what to fight, and the pattern should have been very clear. But no, it was not. I'll give an example that on third fortnight, Colonel Shishupal was asked by the brigade commander and the div commander that, would you like to withdraw to Fazilka? He refused. Though he had suffered adverses at Beriwala Bridge, but he had 3 companies up front and they were still intact. So, though they were under attack. Now, he said, I cannot leave my troops and start falling back, because in the brigade, transport was always placed near the DCB for them to be taken back. So therefore, what constituted a major offensive, what would be the force levels, what would be lost, what would be under attack, these were never laid down. And therefore, their concept of operation, the conceptual thought process was never converted into a pattern of operations, and detailed directions were never given as to how this battle will be fought. It was left to everybody's imagination. So therefore, my first lesson is that the highest commander, when he lays down a concept of operations, the pattern and the way to fight must be laid down in detail. General Raleigh, who had done a wonderful job in the Walam sector in 1962, was fighting a different battle in the plains. And he did not lay down this. And the brigade commander, in spite of his repeated requests, was never told how to fight. It was left to him. And of course, the brigade commander must take fault for the way he executed the battle. Because in spite of the resources being available, the execution of battle was faulty. Next slide, please. Now, the Pakistan brigade commander whom Colonel Reddy referred to must be given credit. He had seen 1965, if you see, I write 1965 repeated. He knew what had happened. He knew what is to be done. He had two choices. Either he could set in a very defensive mode on the path which existed ahead of Suleimanki and then waited for the enemy offensive, or he could show offensive defense and come forward and create space for himself. He did that. And what happened? He surprised the Indian brigade commander, upset and unnerved the leadership. And this is a fact. I mean, we don't wish to absolve the leadership of blame as to why they were upset. The third point I make is the battle management by the leadership was poor. And I'm talking of the battalion and the brigade leadership. The faulty deployment on the frontier was the reason why things went wrong. The DCB, my first commanding officer, had told me to walk on the DCB for 28 days, which I did. And having read the Battle of Dograhi and Nichogel Canal of 65 war, one was very clear that this DCB was the most formidable obstacle and nobody could have captured it. But the deployment was so faulty that the DCB was deprived of manpower and the screens were full strength, and therefore we suffered. The premature withdrawal of troops from the front actually gave the enemy a free run. A brigade was able to capture 3 screens and a bridge on the DCB and still retain itself intact, which happened because the screens did not fight to the end. The orders were not very clear because the order was Fortress Fazilka, and therefore everybody thought after we've done our initial covering troops job, we will fall back. This mindset was wrong. In addition, we destroyed all the bridges on the DCB within 24 hours, even less than 24 hours. What happened? We did not keep any avenue open to go back to the area which we had lost. I will quote later what General Sharon did in 1973 Arab-Israeli war, in spite of losses. What the Israeli brigade did in Golan Heights, they did not lose heart. They did not destroy anything. They fought back. Here, we destroyed all our assets, so we couldn't go back to capture what we had lost. Next slide, please. Then we repeatedly counterattacked from the same direction against an enemy who was very well protected. We kept reinforcing failures. It is a cardinal sin that you do not reinforce failure. You change your tactics, you change your method, right? Therefore, this was one of the biggest problems. Everywhere we are taught, never reinforce failure, never repeat failure, but we did that. And then all the reserves were committed piecemeal and in an ad hoc manner. Why was Forjat not tasked to launch a concerted attack on day one? Why was more armor not brought in? A squadron was sitting in a bore. They could have reached in 6 hours' time. So therefore, this is a very, very important lesson. Last but not the least, in every appreciation, we talk of approaches and we say the shortest approach must be always strongly held. What did we do? The shortest approach from the IB to the DCB was Beriwala Bridge. We left it open and we held it with ad hoc empty platoon. Empty platoon drives vehicles the whole day. They're in no state to fight at the end of the day. So therefore, if you see overall, there was an absence of vision, professional acumen, initiative, and reading of the battle in the leadership at the battalion and brigade level. I mean, Col Thatte is here, he can contradict me, but I am challenging all of them to say, what did they do to seize the initiative? Or what did they do to turn the tables on the enemy? He had committed his entire brigade up front. He was now committed to the front line. There was nothing at the back. The commanding officer of the unit did not display any ingenuity, any initiative or creative thinking during the war. They followed orders. They followed directions. And therefore, I feel they are part and parcel of the blame game. Next. Now, I come to the greatest achievement of Fazilka. It was the outstanding courage and bravery of the junior leaders and the men. It's both sides. I'm not talking of India also. I must compliment the Pakistan side. There was very, very fierce fighting. There was close combat. There was tremendous casualties on both sides. The Indian brigade had more casualties than the Pakistan side. But the men, I started with my first light, the charge of the Light Brigade. They showed bravery, courage, great guts, determination. They never faltered. They never showed once any fear. My platoon was intact. Till the time I was shot, I had lost 5 people, but not one man showed any fear. They were all courageous men. There was not adequate fire support from our side. In spite of that, there were repeated counterattacks in open area. I've shown you the terrain. The fighting was very fierce around Beriwala Bridge. And what happened? We lost 190 men killed, 425 wounded, and 198 missing. This is the Indian casualty. The Pakistan total casualties were not known, but what was on Pakistan 6th Frontier Force, as quoted by Brigadier Farooq Afzal, is there. They lost a very large amount of, there was one officer, one JCO, 56 men, and more than 100 wounded. So the greatest display of courage, of bravery, of fortitude, of determination, of perseverance was shown by the junior leadership, platoon commanders, section commanders, and men. I forgot to mention some company commanders. This is the telling lesson that I wish to convey to the audience. I don't have time to talk of individuals. It will take me hours and hours. Next slide, please. We never made a plan to threaten Soleimani. He is most vulnerable. It is well established in military history that launching an offensive through an obstacle is not the most desirable thing. And therefore, if Pakistan was to launch an offensive, it should have been south of Suleimanki. Yes, Fazilka can be threatened between Gang Canal and the Sadikia canals. The enemy can come from there. It can address Shatirwala, it can address Chananwala. But to bring a division-sized force through one bridge at Suleimanki was never possible. And therefore, we never threatened Suleimanki, and our intelligence failed to tell us where the enemy was and how could they have ever come through that. Next point I come to was the direct fire of tanks and the indirect fire of artillery. A linear obstacle is a very difficult target to hit. Suppression is well nigh impossible, if not impossible. So the enemy was not suppressed, and the enemy casualties were caused more by direct fire than by indirect fire. And therefore, the casualties we suffered were because the enemy was free to fire at any point of time in the battle. Next, please. The coordination between the civil and the police and the irrigation and the military at the lower level, it was felt, was inadequate. Mr. Boparai has spoken. The brigade commander has also told me he was quite happy with that. So my lesson is that these bonhomie, this coordination, this friendship must translate to the lowest level, which was actually, like Col Reddy mentioned, was not there. The second last lesson I wish to draw is that having blown up the bridges, we didn't have means to go across because we did not cater for creating bridges. And I've put in green line what Gen Sharon did. Before the war, the Israelis had always planned that they will go back across the Suez Canal. So they had bridges ready. We had an armored division sitting at the back. We had a strike element sitting. We could have easily brought bridges to cross the DCB because we had not lost the DCB. If we had brought them, we could have put an armored regiment on the other side and we could have trapped the entire Pakistan brigade, which was towards this side of the IB. General Sharon proved it 2 years later that how you can trap the Egyptian Third Army. We lost a great opportunity. And last but not the least, our rehearsals were so different from actual that we could not benefit from that. Next, please. I have finished. I am thankful to the Rashtriya Raksha Suraksha University for giving me this opportunity of putting across the macro level issues, the major issues which concerned Fazilka, because we must be very clear that the men will always deliver. In Fazilka, the problem was the conceptual translation of thoughts into pattern of operations and implementation. I finish with my homage to the great gallant men who laid down their lives in the battlefield. I saw men of my platoon dying. I met many injured soldiers, JCOs of 3 Assam, 15 Rajput, and 4 Jat when I was in the Corps Field Hospital at Bhatinda, in the Army Hospital at Base Hospital at Delhi, and Kirki Hospital. And each one had told me how brave their comrades were who gave their lives. With my salute to these men, I conclude. Thank you. We are open to questions.
Thank you so very much, sir. Those were some really tough lessons that I'm very sure we all will learn from. Thank you so very much. Sir, I think we've overshoot our time. So I'll ask Colonel Joshi. I mean, we do have a lot of questions that have been addressed to the speakers. So, sir, what should we do? Should we take the questions or should we move on to the PC
Yes,
remark?
definitely. Kritika, we should take some lessons because our audience have been waiting and they have put in certain questions. I'm very sure my panelists will also agree that some question must be answered. Their queries must be satisfied. Thank you.
Sir, so I've sorted out the questions. So we'll go according to the sequence. First, questions. There are a few questions addressed to General Nagal. Sir, good afternoon, sir. What was the lack of information a major factor why Pakistani troops were able to cause heavy casualties of Indian troops? So should I ask should I club the questions and ask?
No, it's better that we do one by one because otherwise, what will happen is there'll be some mixing up of answers also.
So I request all the speakers to give short and crisp answers because there are a couple of questions.
Well, I would say that the casualties were not due to lack of information only. The casualties on day one can be attributed to lack of information because the first counterattack was into more or less a blind alley. But thereafter, the casualties were due to repeatedly following the same direction of attack, due to lack of fire support, and due to inadequate suppression of the enemy. That's a short answer.
So one more very interesting question from a retired Bangladeshi Air Force officer. He says, I am wondering what was Indian Air Force doing in Fazilka sector while the army units were being battered. IAF, as I understand, was having air superiority over the PAF in 71 war. The infantry without armored and air support was naturally vulnerable. Could any of the panelists elaborate? So it's open to all panelists.
Well, I'll answer first, then I'll request Colonel Thatte to talk later. See, the close quarter battle of nature at Beriwala Bridge precluded any air support because the accuracy which exists today did not exist at that time. Two, Chum was the scene of some bitter fighting at that point of time, right? And therefore, the effort given to Fazilka was firstly inadequate. The Air Force was carrying out operations in Bangladesh, so a lot of forces were engaged over there. Then the Air Force of concept of operation itself has been debated so often because counter-air operations, destroying the enemy assets, and ground support have always had conflicting requirements. And therefore, too much effort was not dedicated to Fazilka. I'll request Colonel Thatte to speak.
Yeah, what I want to mention is our casualties were not only due to Pakistan artillery, but our own artillery also in that Band area. Because Band is such a narrow place, and whatever shells are fired, if they land just 5 or 10 yards up and down, we will be hit because there's no place. And therefore, I'm convinced that we had a lot of casualties due to not only Pakistan artillery, but our own artillery also.
So we'll keep it short, sir, because otherwise we'll run out of time.
Yes, sir. Sir, there are also a couple of questions addressed to you, Colonel Thatte. There's a question in the 3 operations that you mentioned led by you and the 15 Rajputs. Which operation was the most challenging? That is one question, sir.
Yeah, most challenging was Periwala. But I think, as Jal Nagal has also brought up, we were hitting our head against an impossible task. And repeatedly doing that, even on the 13th, 14th, one of the units, that was told as in phase 1, again we will go in for counterattack, and every time we suffered casualties. So that concept of, counterattack has to come within about 24 hours or maximum 48 hours. There cannot be any counter-attack after that. It has to be attack, and conceptually it is quite different from the counter-attack.
Okay, sir. So there's also one more question from Ankit. So he says, sir, that was an amazing narration. At the age of 88, how do you stay so fit? What advice would you like to give to the present generation?
Well, I lost my wife in 2014 in December, and she was almost 80 at that time. It just so happened, you know. And since then, I'm all by myself because my daughters are in USA, and I'm here. I'm quite happy. I keep myself busy with walking 1 hour in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, yoga 3 times in a week, and eating simple food. In the morning, I have some fruits and all, just smoothie. At night, I just boil vegetables, nothing else, nothing from boiled vegetables. So that keeps me absolutely fit, no problem.
All right, sir. So moving on. Thank you so much, sir. Moving on to Colonel Reddy. Sir, sir, can you please elaborate on what is the exact role of an intelligence officer in a war while on the battlefield?
An intelligence officer is the officer in charge of a section called the intelligence section. That intelligence section has got about 8 to 9 people. An intelligence officer assists the commanding officer in making sketches for his orders, keeping all the maps updated, and in actual battle, the intelligence officer is responsible for reconnaissance, for marking of various routes going on to what is called a forward assembly area, to a forming up place, FUP, and then at the forming up place to mark a start line, proper start line, which should be parallel to the objective. An intelligence officer is also responsible for conducting initial interrogation of any prisoners of war or anyone captured, and for sending them back through the chain of command. That's generally what an intelligence officer does.
So just one last question for Mr. Boparai. So very briefly, sir. So what are your thoughts on the civil-military relationship during the Battle of Fazilka? Was there a scope to improve? So very briefly.
There's no problem at all. I can only say that, for example, to give an example, the maps were not available of the canals. If it's not there, knock everybody down in your way. What are you waiting for? Go up. We are there for you. You just go up. We were always available at every time. Which SGO canals could refuse to give the maps? These silly documents, what is there? So go and knock down everything. But yes, I agree with everyone's assessment. I'd like to thank everyone for a very brutal, brief which you have given about the battle. I am very, very surprised to hear the truthful talking. And I entirely agree with you that there was no point in sacrificing one's lives over that one Sabuana drain or that bridge. There should have been some other kind of thinking, and definitely Air Force was called for. I do not know whether they were called for, did anything happen or not. So let's hope that these mistakes are not made again and again. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, sir. So moving on to the VC address, a brief introduction about him. Professor Dr. Bimalan Patel serves as the Vice Chancellor of the Raksha University, the pioneering Security and Police University of India. Dr. Patel also serves as a member of the National Security Advisory Board of India, a distinguished educationalist, jurist, and administrator. Dr. Patel is renowned for his scholarship in the field of international law and international relations, across the globe. During his professional career of nearly 30 years, Dr. Patel has served in various roles such as the director at the Gujarat National Law University, member of the 21st Law Commission of India, and among others. A former international servant, Dr. Patel has worked for 15 years at international organizations such as the United Nations of Youth and the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons at The Hague, Netherlands. Over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Lieutenant General Sri Nagal, Sri Thatte, Sri Vijay Reddy ji, Sri Boparai ji, their families and serving and retired members of our armed forces, dear guests from Bangladesh, NCC cadets, students from various schools, colleges and universities, ladies and gentlemen. I'm indeed grateful to Colonel Joshi and the team for organizing consistently since December 2020 monthly webinar on this historical victory of India in liberation war for Bangladesh. Yet again, a very enlightening webinar. It remains an honor and will always remain an honor for the Rashtriya University for telecasting now this webinar on the Gallantry Awards portal, prepared, contributed by the School of Information Technology, Artificial Intelligence and Cybersecurity of the Rashtriya University, curated, maintained and led by my colleague, Director Colonel Nitish Patnagar. I thank you. I thank everyone in the school and the School of Internal Security, Defense and Strategic Studies for this excellent webinar. When the Indo-Pak War broke in 1971, our army followed a unique strategy during the war in East Pakistan. We avoided a frontal attack and entrapped the enemy from behind. And this Indian strategy is best explained in the words of Pakistani commander Niazi, and I quote, "You always seemed to come behind us," unquote. In the Western Front, the objective of our army was to maintain a defensive posture. Towards this end, the chosen strategy was to contain Pakistan's offensive operations and protect our vital lines of communication by carrying the war into adversary's territory. Lieutenant General Thande, General Officer Commanding in Chief, Western Command, conducted the operations from Jammu and Kashmir to the Ganganagar district in Rajasthan, while Lieutenant General Webex, the General Officer Commanding Chief, Southern Command, directed the operations in Rajasthan and the Kutch area. On the Western Front, Pakistan's objective was to capture a substantial portion of Indian territory to compensate for any losses sustained on the Eastern Front. A comparison of the deployment on both sides of the border suggested that the forces were evenly matched in the Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab and Rajasthan sectors on the Western Front. In the Western sector, we lost 1,757 soldiers. 4,360 were wounded, 263 missing, and 529 were taken as prisoners of war. Friends, Since December last year, the Rashtriya Raksha University has been fortunate enough to get first-hand accounts of the various battles fought unitedly by the armed forces of India and the Mukti Bahini against the operation of Pakistani forces. Today's webinar was full of learning lessons, the operational and human aspects of the Indian Army's involvement in the battle of directly from those who fought in the battles. In the Punjab sector, the Pakistani attack started with the selling of the Indian border posts on the evening of 3rd December. At Hussainiwala, a powerful attack was launched by the Pakistani troops, 4 battalions indeed, well supported by armor and artillery. They destroyed the bridge over the Satluj River and forced the defending Indian battalion to withdraw east of the river on 4th, 5th December. There was a looming shadow of Pakistani aggression in the Foxtrot sector, as it was a strategic area located in the western flank of 11 Corps. As it turned out, the operation did not develop into a major offensive by the enemy, but were confined to action only in the Fazilka subsector. The Battle of Fazilka was definitely a tough lesson in maneuvering for the Indian Army. Pakistani troops, however, suffered ravages at Sehjra village, the northwest of Firozpur, and Dera Baba Nanak. Pakistan also mounted an attack on the Ranyan Samsar and Fatehpur Burj Salant and captured some posts on 3rd, 4th December. But the Indians recaptured the posts after a counterattack. In these battles, in the Punjab sector, we suffered 371 were killed, 880 wounded, 348 missing, while Pakistan suffered 1,439, 2,266 wounded, and 167 taken prisoners. Despite all these challenges, as narrated by our brave and this fine gentleman, we fought bravely against all odds amidst danger. They perceived. Lieutenant General Nagal's recalling his fascinating journey as a platoon commander in the Fort Jap, his overview and lessons from the battle were fascinating. The youth will and must seek inspiration from Sir's grit and determination, despite being wounded during the war. Lieutenant Colonel Thatte's role as the CEO of 15 Rajput Regiment, a pivotal to the narration of Battle of Fazilka. The 15 Rajputs' essential service of holding posts and counter-attacking when necessary was a game changer for this very battle. Sri Reddy's recounting of his memories as a young intelligence officer for any student, for any officer, is surreal to hear. It was feeling like one is transported back to 1971, and as if one was with Sri Reddy. Sri Singh Boparai's crucial part as the district magistrate of the Firozpur district in which Fazilka lies, again an instrumental to provide the army the necessary support it needed. Yet again, this September 2021 webinar, monthly webinar, has enriched each and every one of us who has been participating, who has been actively listening to this great initiative created by my colleague Lieutenant General Subhata Saha last year, ably mentored, guided by Colonel Joshi. This inspirational webinar aims to honor our veterans of our armed forces and create an understanding of the liberation war amongst the youth in India and abroad. And each and every webinar becomes next month's what it is. And next month we will have the fall of Taka, which will be the last in this particular series. And we all look forward for this next month's webinar. I take this opportunity to salute the brave soldiers, brave officers of India, Mukti Bahini, for the enormous courage, for the valiant victory which they brought, the enormous personal, professional experiences. And we look forward not only to the webinars, but once the situation becomes normal, it would be a very small, a token gratitude towards all these colleagues if they could visit the Rashtriya University and interact physically with the young boys, girls, forces, those who are aspiring to join our armed forces, our police forces, security forces, even the judiciary. And I think by doing this, the university is on its way to create the apt culture of security and strategic thinking. Once again, I thank all of you, the team, School of Internal Security, Defense and Strategic Studies. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir, for the inspiring and encouraging words. I would now request Colonel Deepak Joshi to give the vote of thanks. Sir.
Thank you very much, Kritika. Firstly, Professor Dr. Bimalan Patel, thank you very much for your kind words. You keep on inspiring us through your words and the latitude which you have granted us to do these webinars, and also you have instructed us to do other battles after we finish with this series. Definitely, it is very inspiring, sir. Lieutenant General BS Nagal, Param Vishesh Seva Medal, Ati Vishesh Seva Medal, Sena Medal, retired. I have to thank him personally. He was my panelist. He was my CO at one point of time, and I greatly learned with him. And today, his clear-headedness and the way he has gone about, right from describing what the situation was there, and especially the very hard-hitting lessons which he brought out were tremendous, and he spoke straight from the heart, and where the fault lies, he has put it wherever it was there. I'm thankful to him for this truthfulness and straightforwardness. It is the lessons which have been there, which all armies personnel should actually listen to, right from the concept of war downwards to the artillery and air support, which we also saw that in Kargil also, very narrow ridges, without direct support, you cannot do anything. Artillery, in fact, I visited those areas. I saw artillery shells, which I called a graveyard of artillery, where shells and tons are thrown there, but no effect on the people on the narrow ridges or the bunds. So very, very thankful to you, sir, for this wonderful lessons which you have brought out. I have to thank Lieutenant Colonel SG Thatte for this wonderful narration of how a CO feels when he has been given almost an impossible task and he has lost very valiant men and very brave officers, and he has then not lost heart, and whatever other tasks has been given to him, and he has done it so wonderfully well and to his best of capability. Whatever was has to be done has to be done. Of course, a lot of heroic people have lost their lives to the nationhood. Thank you very much, Col Thatte sir. A very well narrated instance. Of course, coming to Col P. Vijay Reddy sir, I am also again thankful to you. You spoke from the heart as you saw it, as you deemed fit. You thought there were things were to be told, you told them. Again, thank you very much. Such nice narrations. Our students and our participants would have definitely taken a lot of lessons home from this. My special thanks to Shri Singh Boparai, Kirti Chakra, IAS retired. I spoke to him and he was straight on the ball and he said, yes, I will come and speak. We are very thankful to you, sir. And the lessons which you have brought out and things which have happened and how you have narrated them, and also how casualties were there, how they were saved, what stories were there behind it. Thankful to you, sir. We will definitely look forward to further interaction in the future too. Amongst my audience, I see Air Marshal V.K. Bhatia, Dr. Rama Mattu, Lieutenant Colonel Martin Khongman, which I've been trying to ring since last evening. I spoke to General Saha. He said the narration of Lieutenant Colonel Martin Khongman will come in very handy, but I was told that you are not, slightly indisposed. We wish you speedy recovery. And it's my unfortunate this thing and everybody's that we could not hear what the side of 3SM was there. We hope when you get well, sir, we would be able to hear to your side, and I could see you there in the audience. That is a very, very brave, sir, and very, very heartening. Thank you very much. Of course, we have I think General Milan Naidu amongst us, amongst my very many audience. So thank you very much, audience, for being with us. Thank you, the panelists, for being with us and giving out your thought. You have worked very, very diligently on your slides, on your narration, and of course, General Nagal guiding us at every stage, and other people we were in touch with, including CO, present CO 3SM. Somehow we could not get their side of the story, but hope we will bring that story someday to you again. I would be missing on my duty if I did not thank the administration of this university, who have supported us wholeheartedly in all our endeavors. Of course, the IT team under Keyur Bhai, Weber Bhai, on whom we keep on banking so much, and throughout the day they have been able to give us a stable platform on which a very heavy our IT men of SISDSS as well as SITAX is working there in the background, holding still there behind us in this office, not in front of the camera, but thank you to him also. Of course, I have to thank Ms. Kritika Patil for moderating so well, organizing, being in touch with all our panelists, trying to do a lot of work, some slide work, and moderating. And of course, there are difficulties. She's come up through them very diligently. Thank you very much, Kritika. Behind the scene, some of my staff, the Ishan Tonk, who does the publicity slides and things like that, our assistant professors Divya and Sumana, and other research assistant like Aditya, Rahul, they have been our backbone and they assist us very, very well. Last but not the least, my students, they are there in big numbers. They listen until the very end. Some of us, of course, left for lunch because we overshot the time, but some of them are still there and we're thankful to them. But whoever was there, thank you very much. You have been wonderful audience. You ask very good questions. I would also like to thank people who have joined from Bangladesh, who were there. I could see Mr. Atharuddin Talukdar being there. He was one of our panelists in one of the webinars. Any other person who have missed out inadvertently, but we are thankful to you. So with this, we come to the close of today's session. I've remained indebted to my panelists, and all these experience which you have narrated, with your permission, will combine them and present it in form of a book with all these 12 battles which we have gone through, including the starting where genocide of Bangladesh was spoken. This is what we propose to do, and hopeful, like the Vice Chancellor has already extended a very warm welcome to all of you. We would hope to invite you in the coming months. There are hands being raised. General Nagal sir, are you saying something to us? Of course, I can see Mr. Shri Singh Boparai being very happy. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. Thank you, everybody. See you in next month's webinar, on which we will see the fall of Dhaka. Maybe if it becomes too big to handle in one, we may break it up into 2 parts. But definitely, this is what we propose to do now. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Jai.
Jay.